for educational critical review and reaction is the late, great Jordan Maxwell.
Exactly. And there was a lady scientist that was giving a lecture on TED. Have you ever seen the TED lectures? TED, the TED lectures? Well, this lady was a physicist, and she was saying the name of her lecture was, "What is the brain for? Why do we have humans who have brains? What is a brain for? What does it do?" And point of fact, we normal people have all kinds of ideas of what the brain is doing. But scientifically, what do we know that the brain does? And it only does one thing only. It controls all the movements, everything that needs to move. It controls the movements of your hands, the movements of your body, all the things that when you're jumping, when you're running, the brain controls all the body's movements. It controls everything in the body. When you're breathing, what you're doing, when you're having an ache or pain, the brain is controlling movements of the body only. It is not in any way contributing to thoughts. Thoughts are not in the brain. And so she said, well, where do our imaginations and our ideas and our thoughts come from? We know it's not in the brain. The brain is a physical thing that's controlling the body. But where does the knowledge and wisdom and understanding and the interest and fascination with subjects come from? And she said, scientifically, we don't know. We have no idea where wisdom and knowledge and education and knowledge comes from. It's not from the brain. We are all tapped into something. She said, we're all tapped into some kind of a matrix, some kind of a computerized form that is feeding us knowledge and feeding us information and causing us to think and causing us to speak and say things that we don't even know where it's coming from. That's why you can sit down with a person and just start talking. Well, where's it coming from? Did he write that script, yesterday? No, he's just talking. It's just coming out of his mind. He's just talking. Well,
it even seems to be limited. I was actually talking to my son the other day about that. He was telling me, well, where do we get ideas? And I was saying, I don't know, but I know that we never get new ideas, like really new ideas. Like you can't think of a color you've never seen or imagine a sound you've never heard. You have to have some kind of reference.
And there's nothing new under the sun, as the scripture says. So there's no new situation that could happen that's never happened before. No, whatever happens in the world, no matter how off the wall and screwy it is, it's happened many times before. It's just now you're experiencing it. And so I know that there's different dimensions. There's no doubt in my mind because of my own personal experiences. I have seen things and been in a place to see things which I know were said to be prehistoric and gone millions of years ago. Well, they're not gone millions ago. I could take you to see things which are said to have been prehistoric and extinct millions of years ago. I saw them. And so if I saw them, and they were extinct millions of years ago, that means I was seeing a different dimension for that moment. My eyes and my personal self was able to go into a different dimension and see something which, in fact, does not exist now, but did exist millions of years ago. Well, I saw it with my own eyes. And so how did I see something today in my life today? I see something that I know existed millions of years ago. Well, but I did see it. And so it tells me I wasn't there millions of years ago. But for some reason, my brain, being a computer, picked up on something that's a reality today. But it was played many, many millions of years ago. And so I picked up on it and I saw it. So that tells me that there's different dimensions, different things going on the earth. And so I have a friend, a doctor friend of mine, he took me to meet one of his friends who was an old man, about 95 years old. He was a military, he was a Navy flyer. And this old guy was about 95 years old. He was a Navy flyer. And he was telling us, when we went over to see him, we got to talking about strange things. And he was telling us his story. He said that many, many years ago, he was a squadron leader, leading a group of planes into the Bermuda Triangle. And he said, we didn't think of it as the Bermuda Triangle. That's where we were. But today you call it Bermuda Triangle. That's what we were. And he said, and I was a pilot. I was a head pilot. I was the pilot. And he said, and as we went into the Bermuda Triangle, he said, all people do not know that when you enter the Bermuda Triangle, your compass on a ship or plane or whatever, your compass immediately changes. The moment you fly into a Bermuda Triangle, your compass is all, no matter where it is, no matter what kind of compass, it will change instantly from magnetic north to true north. There's a big difference between true north and magnetic north. And you're flying in a plane is using a compass that goes by magnetic north. You enter the Bermuda Triangle, and immediately all compasses point to true north. No matter what kind of, if you're on a plane or a boat, it doesn't matter. Why? Why is it just in the computer, just in the Bermuda Triangle, all compasses change instantly to true north? I don't know. It's just fascinating. Something's down there. Something's causing it. But he was saying that when he was a squadron commander, he was leading a group of planes, and he was a lead plane. He was a lead man. And he said, I turned to my co-pilot and told him to take over. I'm going to the boys' room and take a smoke. And he said, so I went back into the back of the plane, went to the men's room. And he said, and lit up a cigarette. And I was talking and thinking. And he said, so when I came out, I was in a different plane. I was in a totally different plane. And he said, and all the soldiers were soldiers from the 40s. They were all dressed in U.S. military form, Navy, flying, but it wasn't U.S. Navy. It was like some kind of a naval operation with U.S. insignias, but it wasn't modern day. It wasn't my time. This goes back to a long time ago. And he said, and I looked at them, and they looked at me, and everybody saw me, and they were wondering, who the hell are you? Where did you come from? And he said, I'm thinking the same thing. Where am I? I was in my plane. I went to the bathroom. I come out. I'm in a different plane. And he said, they came up and grabbed me and held me and took me up to the pilot. And they said to the pilot, this man was on the plane. We just came out of the men's room. He was on the plane. So they thought I was a stowaway. And he said, and they told the captain, he's a stowaway. And the captain said, well, hold on to him, and he will be arrested when we land. And he said, I told him, you can't arrest me. I am a captain. See these stripes? You know who you're talking to here? And he said, it doesn't matter how many stripes you got. On this plane, I'm the captain. You're on my plane, and I didn't bring you here, so we're arresting you when we land. Don't tell me about your stripes. I don't care who you are. We'll let the government figure it out. And he said, so I argued with him for a little bit, and the captain says, if you're the captain, you want to fly my plane? And he said he just made the gesture. He's going to get up. Here, you want to fly it? And he said, I looked at the plane, and I couldn't read. I didn't know how to fly this plane. I didn't know how to read any of this. And yet it's an American-built plane, and these are American flyers. I'm one of them, but I'm from another time, and I'm in the Bermuda Triangle, and another person's plane, and from another era of time. And so he says, so I'm just telling you, at 95 years old, I'm just telling you what happened to me. I don't know how to explain it. That's just my experience. Well, that tells me this is the old man was not making this up for a movie or a television show. He was just telling you what happened. Well, that's like the ancient people. They told us stuff from the ancient Sumerian days. They told us from 5,000, 7,000 years ago. They told us things and stories, And we think, oh, it's a bunch of silly, nonsensical bull mythologies and all that silly stuff. No, they were just people 5,000, 7,000 years ago who actually saw things with their own eyes and experienced things, and they were trying to explain it and write it down what they saw. So that they're telling you something that today sounds absolutely outrageous and stupid to us today. Yeah, but you weren't there. And wait till you see something that doesn't make sense. I think that there is some kind of a mutation going on purposely to change the human race into a different kind of creature. That is, in my opinion, obvious. They are reprogramming our minds and our brains around the world. And the thing that I do is pattern recognition. I've always been good at seeing patterns in things. And I see a profound pattern recognition of people all over the earth being reprogrammed into a different kind of life. And this is why they're destroying all cultures. All the cultures of the world are being destroyed. And they want to somebody wants to amass all the cultures into one culture. And I remember that one Masonic writer, Albert Pike, wrote he was a very famous Masonic author, Albert Pike. In the first couple of pages of his book, he said something that caught my attention. And I've thought about it ever since. When I was very young, I read it. He said, if you want to control the whole world, don't worry about having to control all the humans on the earth. Learn how to control one man and one woman, because all men are men. So you learn how to control a man, you've learned how to control the world of men. If you learn how to control the ideas and thoughts and the life of a woman, you now can control all women, because they're all the same. So therefore, it boils it down to not all the people of the world, but what is a human man? What is a man and what is a woman? Where did we come from? And then you begin to go back into the Old Testament of the Bible in Genesis. And in Genesis, it has an incredibly fascinating story there that most people have never heard before, and the churches don't know anything about. And the people in churches, the clergy that do know, they're not telling the Christians anything. They're not telling you the truth. They're giving you fanciful stories, because that's all we humans want, is just to hear a nice story. That's all we want. When we go to a movie, it doesn't mean it's going to change your life. It just means it's an interesting story. That's all we were paying for. We don't want to change our life. We just want to see a different story. So we pay money to go see a movie. Well, that's what's happening in a church. That's why when you go to a movie, you go to a theater. The word THE in Greek is God. God is THE. The is God. This is why if you're going to study, the study of God is called theology. And, theology gives us theocrat. Theocracy is the rule of God. The is God in the ancient Greek. And that's why when you go to a church, it is a theater, because it is a show about God. It's a God show, the theater. And so it's a fascinating and profoundly complex story about how we are created in the image and likeness of God. And what are you talking about when you talk about God? Like I said, I don't see God in the same way other people do. I believe that what we're talking about is some kind of an incredible, unbelievable, unfathomable subject of a world computerized system of life in our galaxy. And that's an incredible story. It's not a God that loves little children and created the flowers and created the beautiful things on the earth. That is the same God created the black widow spiders, the boa constrictors, and the predator animals and the lions that eat other animals and tear them apart and eat them, and all of the wars and the violence and the pornography and the craziness and lunacy, alcoholism and drug addiction and murder. It's all part of God's creation. I don't see God as just one wonderful Father. No, the Creator is the creator of all things. And there must be some kind of a computerized system that the Creator has put into place which controls his creation, period.
That you say that, and I've had this thought before, that there's kind of only two possibilities with the all-creator God. And that's like one, like you said, that was actively involved from the very beginning in every detail of how things would unfold. Or another option is that our existence is an experiment, and we know that you can't observe an experiment without changing it. So it would seem like if there was a God that had an experiment and there was going to let free will go, that we would have to be in a bubble, with time there, and he would have to be outside. But if you think if God has no time and he's outside of that bubble of time, the experiment would be over immediately for God. Like he would start it and it would end to him instantaneously. But for us, we're this big old long chain of events of things interacting, and you only really get two choices with that. That's God's was involved in the whole thing, or he set himself apart, didn't pay attention to it because he didn't want to change the outcome of the experiment, which we know that happens. If you observe something, you're changing it just from the simple fact of we still don't get that. Thinking about it, I've always took that experiment to mean that that's mind over matter, because we're not putting out any particles from our eyeballs when we observe something, but yet we still change the outcome of whatever it is we're observing. And I kind of wanted to get into that too, like you were talking about this computer program, and it seems like all of the modern religions on Earth that come from older religions or whatever, that we're pretty much worshiping the same characters and figures throughout the world. They named them different stuff. But I heard you talking about this world revolutionary movement, and it's kind of like,
yes.
That made a lot of sense to me, because at the same time as they're programming us with all kinds of, bizarre things and trying to destroy the family on one hand, and putting out these ideas and kind of making you participate in the things that they like through the programming on television. Then also you got this group over here pretending to be the good guys, and they somehow have more money than is possible from the amount of people they have paying in tithes. So it doesn't make any sense that the same bankers are funding both sides of this weird two-sided thing here, where like you can go over here and worship with our church that's not really about what it says it's about, or you can, fall into the sinful ideas over here that we're just putting in your face at face value that it's that. And I see these weird things like, however you feel about abortion. We have Planned Parenthood, and who would have thought that all throughout time, they've been doing sacrifices, like on Saturnalia, they would have 12 days of whatever, and each day they would have a different sacrifice. And a lot of people don't want to get into who or what they were sacrificing, because some of them were human, and obviously the Romans made a big deal out of children on one of those days of the 12 days. I forgot the name of that exact day. It was like Jubilee, or I forget exactly, because I'm bad with names, but it's always centered around children. And, and I know there's things going on YouTube. I can't get too detailed, but everybody knows what we're talking about. And then they have nowadays, we have a Planned Parenthood that's, you can say that it's for whatever, but they've convinced people that it's their human right to kill their own descendants and end their DNA line on the earth. And not only that, they have child sacrifice in the public where nobody thinks it's a big deal. And not only that, people that don't believe in it are still participating because they have to pay their tax dollars to help do it. So they won't let you not be involved in it. And even if you try to ignore it, it'll be on television. And if they won't let you get away from it no matter where you turn.
Yeah, there's no doubt about that. Like I said, it's a preordained experiment. It's called the World Revolutionary Movement, WRM, World Revolution Movement. And when I came across it was when I was studying the Soviet Union. I was looking at the beginnings of the Soviet Union and come to find out that the Soviet Union, which was the first time international communism became on the stage in Russia. And we found out that the Russian communism was thought up, the idea for it was dreamt up in the minds in Washington, D.C. and London, England. Fabian socialists became the idea. It was to change the whole human race. But there were two ways of doing it. There was socialism and communism. Today, they have become one and the same thing because socialism today is communism. But they said back then, back in the 1700s, that socialism was a slow way of slowly changing the thinking of the human race. But little by little by little, it began to infiltrate your thinking and change your mind on things until one day you become a full-blown slave to the state. That's socialism. But today, socialism is actually communism because the communists had a different idea. They said, we don't have time to play all those games to change people's opinion and everything and change everything. So one day you become a communist. We don't have time. You just go in there and cut their heads off and shed some blood and beat them up and take them and put them on their knees and make them accept your way. Make them accept communism. Whether they like it or not, kill them and put them to death in front of everybody, and everybody else will listen. And so the communists want to do it now with violence. The socialists want to do it, slowly but surely through television and through movies and through our media, little by little. They're changing us to think like they want us to think. They don't want you thinking like you used to. Concerning yourself with your freedom and your liberty and your justice and your family and your mother and your family and freedom to think and freedom to educate yourself. The people today in America's government do not want that. They don't want you doing that. They don't care about how important life is to you. They don't want you reading and studying nothing. They want you to shut up and do what you're supposed to do. And that's being called being in compliance. And so what I found out, one of the first things I began to look at when I started studying the Soviet Union and the system of government, was that Soviet money, the money that was printed in the Soviet Union, had swastikas on them. Swastikas were the symbol for the Nazis, but on the Soviet money, there are swastikas in the center of Soviet money. And on today, I think even today, I know it was there because I've seen pictures of them on the web. The passports for the Soviet Union had a big red swastika in the middle of it on the front cover. A red swastika for the passport of the Soviet Union. Why would the Soviet Union communists have a red swastika at the same time Adolf Hitler had red swastika? There's got to be a connection there, and there was a connection between Adolf Hitler and the Soviet Union that we don't even know about. And then on so many important insignias and medals and documents of the German Nazi Party, they had hammer and sickle. They had hammers and sickles on their documents in Nazi Germany. Hammer and sickle was a symbol for the communists in the Soviet Union, and swastikas for the Soviet Union were actually came from Nazi Germany. So both sides were using each other's symbols. And we come to find out that both sides were being financed by Americans, by American banks. British bankers, British international bankers were financing the Soviet Union and the Nazis purposely. And so it became obvious to me that there's only one operation on the earth. It's one thing. Somebody is running the earth from behind the scenes. And the best way it is, well, I've learned this from military people, the best way to change the earth is a war. It's the best way to change things quickly is a war. War comes in and changes everything, destroys a nation, kills the people, and sets up a whole new dispensation for the world.
Let me ask you this question in a hypothetical situation. We have Israel there, how they've, pretty much it seems like the main goal of World War II was to cut a chunk out of the Middle East there. I mean, it was, and then make the euro, which is a well-known Nazi plan, but now we have that today. We call it the euro, and they're getting mad about the little nationalists that are wanting to, break away now because they had already got it where they wanted it. But we know that all three religions kind of go back to the same thing. They're the main ones. And recently I found out that the queen is actually the 43rd granddaughter of the Prophet Muhammad. So she's directly related to the Prophet Muhammad, although she's not supposedly in Islam. She was, like a Hitler Youth, and there's the whole thing about financing Hitler at the same time as pretending to be, against them. And then, so we have this whole situation going on in Jerusalem. Basically, everybody's waiting for the dome on the rock there to be taken down, so that there could be a new Solomon's temple and kind of this self-fulfilling prophecy of Armageddon and all of that. But it seems to me that after that's obviously planned, and it's been planned for a long time for those events to take place at that spot. And it makes me wonder, like you were saying, that it's been said many times by Kissinger and lots of other people that the main kind of government that's they want for the New World Order or whatever would be a communist capitalist society. So after there's this big war of these three religions who like you said, don't even worship what they claim on their face to be, but they're actually worshiping something else. But after that, there'll be this big, massive war, and it'll be really easy for the communists and the socialists to say, see, look, Mao was right, religion is poison, and all of this. It would be an excuse for consolidation, and then you go back to always like the Nazis allied with the Ottoman Empire. So there's always been a connection between these two groups of Islam and communism. And even today, like when you go out and you see these marches of leftists, you'll see people marching for Islam in the same crowd as the LGBT crowd, even though that, if they were in one of those countries, they'd throw them off a roof. But for right now, they're like useful idiots and allies to go march together, the quote unquote socialists that don't realize. And it's so funny now that they got all these little socialist young people going around calling everyone else Nazis, when, anybody with a brain knows that the Nazis were the socialists. You're the Nazi. That's why you're telling people to shut up and don't think, and you can't disagree with us. So I thought it was really ironic when I found that out, that the Queen of England literally is related directly to the origin of Islam. And then at the same time, they got that rock. I forgot what you call it, the little thing under the throne that's supposed to be where Jacob laid down, and so they have all these old.
That's the stone of skull.
They got all these old world traditions and with the Masonic thing. So it seems like the end result is, where they would trick everyone to being part of capitalism, but at the same time, the only religion they're allowed to have is to Saturn or the sun. It's the same worship, and I noticed, to kind of round back around where I started, the Hebrew letter, the Ayin there, and I noticed that they use that for the New World Order, the eye symbol, the all-seeing eye. But I heard you talking about how in the old world they always showed God or Jesus or whoever. They were always in the middle of the sun. And even in most of these things where they show the eye is in the middle of the sun. So it's like the eye of God, or I don't know what they're trying to say, or their God is looking at you. It's his system, or, and I've been trying to figure out for the life of me who these characters are in the original pantheon, like maybe the Sumerians. Who are the characters? Because it seems like they mixed them up where you can't tell which one's which.
Yeah, it's very convenient that way. But you see, the ancient peoples knew they could see that the human eye is flawlessly, perfectly round. And they look at the sun as flawless and perfectly round. And so they assumed that the eye of God was the sun. The sun was the eye of God. Why? Because of what the sun represents. A lot of people believe that the ancient people were sun worshippers. They worshiped the sun. In point of fact, no ancient culture ever worshiped the sun. If you go back and read the literature of the ancient religions, it will tell you that the people venerated the sun, and it made it look like they were worshiping it. No, they were showing honor to the sun because it represented the spiritual applications of God. It represented the things of God. Why? Because it was bright. It brought light into the world. Well, that's what God does. He enlightens the world. It causes warmth to come and warms up this frozen earth so that we can live a comfortable life. So he takes care of us. And the sun is pure energy. Absolute pure energy is coming from the sun. And therefore, the sun, from the energy of the sun, comes here, and we can grow our food and grow our plants and keep warm, and we can grow because we're getting energy from the sun. And so the ancient Egyptians said the sun is pure energy. If the sun were to keep its energy and not share it with us, he would live forever because energy is life, and the sun is pure energy. So if he would keep the sun would keep its energy, it would last forever because he is life. Energy is life. But because he's giving his energy to us, causing our food to grow and keeping our earth warm so we can live on it and grow, they said God's Son was giving his life so that we might live. That's right. We wouldn't be here if it wasn't for the Son giving us his life. So it was not your son or Africa's son or Egypt's son. It was God's Son. God was the owner of that round globe in the sky. We call it the sun. So it's God's Son, and it was the only begotten Son of God. Why? Because there's only one Son, the only begotten Son that God had. And so the Son was giving his life so that we might live. So today we say Jesus died for us. No, the Son is giving his light on the earth, and the light of the sun is energy. And so he's giving his energy to keep us alive. And so you go back to the word worship. Worship is a connection between two words, worth, W-O-R-T-H, and ship, S-H-I-P. Everything in English has to do with maritime admiralty law. Maritime law is the law of the sea, of water. What is all the business that man has on water? It's in a ship. And so we have a dealership of courtsmanship, sportsmanship, scholarship, friendship, all kinds of ships. All of our words are connected to ship, scholarship, dealership, and worship. And so we have the word worth, W-O-R-T-H, worth. And so whatever you put a high price on, whatever you think is so important, that you show the admiration for the volume of whatever it is you're interested in. You are really interested in a particular subject because it holds for you something very important. So you think it's very valuable. So therefore it's called worthship. And worthship becomes known as worship. And so when we say you worship something, that means that you're putting a high value on something. So if you put a high value on making big money, then we say you are you're worshiping money. If you put a high value on sex, then you're sexual. It's sex worship. Worthship, the value of a thing that you find is important. And so part of the ancient world of worship, we now know, we've known it for hundreds of years. the foundation for Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. All three religions are based on another one, an older religion called Hinduism. Hinduism gives us the basis for Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. All three religions. Why are there three religions? Because that's interesting. Why always three?